In this video, we're going to talk about applying materials to our 3D objects in our scene. I have a very simple scene constructed over here in Modo, just a kind of a sphere, a cube, a simple little cone, and I want to start applying materials to them. And materials are the object, or excuse me, the item inside of Modo that affects a number of different channels, including the color, how reflective it is, how bright it is, things like that. So that's basically what a material does. It affects how this object is going to be shaded upon final render. Now, we're going to be doing all of this inside of our shader tree, but there's one step that we have to do before we can adjust our shader tree. And it all starts with selections. Much like everything in Modo, applying material starts with selecting polygons that we want to have be changed. Let's jump over to our Render tab. I'm up here at the top of the screen where it says Render. Click on Render. And the Render tab, if you haven't been here before, is broken up into three major areas. We have the preview window here, which is kind of a quick preview of what the final render is going to look like. We have a traditional 3D viewport, but this traditional 3D viewport is set to look at the renderable camera right here. So we're looking through the camera that's going to be rendered. And then we have a regular 3D viewport down here at the bottom where we can navigate around, move things around. I kind of love having this viewport down here at the bottom because there's so much that we can do inside of our 3D scene. And, you know, or there's so much that we can do inside the Render tab, and it's nice to be able to do that here instead of having to jump back over to the Model tab. You know, it's just a great workflow enhancement. Let's jump over to our shader tree. I want to deselect my plane. And we're going to start with our cube here in my item list. And let's jump over to our shader tree real fast and see what's going on. If we expand the render section of our shader tree, you can see that there's four basic items. These are the four basic items that are going to come with every scene. These are the default. We're always going to have a base material, a base shader, a final color render output, and an alpha render output. Let's start with the base material, because as we know from our introduction to the shader tree renders our scene starting from the base material, or whatever is at the bottom of the list. In our case, the base material. Now, the base material, this is the icon for a material, this little green sphere. If we click on it, we're going to be brought to the base material properties. Now, inside of these properties, there's a lot of different channels that we can edit to control how our cube is going to look. Okay, let's start off with color. Diffuse color. Right now is set to white. We haven't made any sort of polygon selection yet, so the base material is going to shade everything in our scene. So when I change the diffuse color, let's just click on it. Brings open the new color picker, and I apologize for some of it getting cut off, but we're going to make everything blue. Okay, the base material is going to shade everything in our scene according to whatever the base material properties are. In our case, I've changed the diffuse color property to blue, so everything in our scene is going to be blue. Okay, now in order for us to call out certain objects to be different colors, we need to create what's called a material for that object. Okay, so let's start off. I'm on my cube layer, so I can select my cube, and I'm going to double click on my cube to select the entirety of that cube, and I'm going to hit the M key. M for material. As soon as I hit the M key, we're going to get this little popover. It's going to ask us to create a name for the new material. I'm going to make it red. I'm just going to kind of describe it as whatever color I'm going to make it. And we're going to make this color red. Don't worry about the diffuse and the specular amounts. We're going to get to those later. We're just assigning materials at the moment. Let's hit OK. And there we go. Notice what's changed. The cube is now red. Everything else has remained blue. If we go over to our shader tree and look what's going on, we can see that we've added a new part in the interface. This guy right here. This is a material group. So if we expand this material group by clicking on the little arrow, we can see that this group has its own material. So basically what we're doing is that we're assigning this group to the cube. So whatever we change this material to be, it's going to be applied to the cube. We've made a relationship. We've tagged the cube polygons to look at this material group. So if we change this, let's make this, I don't know, let's make it yellow. There we go. Notice how our cube is now yellow because there's a relationship between this item in our shader tree and the 3D geometry in the scene. Okay, let's keep going. Let's make another one. I'm gonna change this material back to red because it's just really gonna confuse me to have something that's labeled red and have the color be yellow. So I'm just gonna change it back to red. There we go. Okay, so let's make some new materials. I'm gonna go back to my let's do the cone. So I've selected the cone item, and let's double click to select the entirety of the cone. Hit the M for material key. There we go, and let's make this one yellow. And we're going to assign it a color. There we go. Hit OK. And now we have an additional material group inside of our shader tree. Check it out. We have the existing red one, but here's the new one. Here's the yellow one that we just added. Much like we did with the red, we made a relationship. We said, hey, these polygons over here, these polygons that I've selected, you're going to be assigned to the yellow material. Okay? So we've made a relationship between this material and these polygons on the cone. Okay, now let's do another one. Let's do the sphere. I think the sphere is up. So let's grab the sphere. Back to our shader tree. I'm going to select my sphere, but this time I want to do something a little bit different. I want to zoom in. Instead of assigning all the polygons in our sphere, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do half and half. Okay, we're going to have half the sphere be yellow. And let me select all these top polygons here. I'm going to hold down Shift. Here's kind of a great little trick. If you hold down Shift and hit the up arrow, it's going to grow your selection by one row of polygons at a time. So that's half of my sphere. Now I'm going to assign these polygons to an existing material group. Hit M again. And I want these top guys to be yellow. So if we click on this little arrow in the name category right here, it's going to give us a list of all the material groups that are currently in our shader tree. So I want to apply these materials to the yellow group and hit OK. And now the top ones are yellow. Okay, let's do the exact same thing for the bottom. Here we go. I want to hit M again. This time, these guys are going to be red. There we go. So half of the sphere is red, half the sphere is yellow. So we can recycle our material groups. We don't have to create a new material group for every new polygonal selection. We can recycle them. We can reuse them over and over and over again. So that's the basics of applying materials to our scene. It's just that easy. We have to select the polygons, hit the M key, and assign a material. Okay, let's do one more. I want to grab these two rows in my sphere here. There we go. Hit the L key for loop. Let's assign a new material. Let's make these green. And let's make the color kind of a nice green. There we go. So on the sphere, we have 3 different materials. We have the yellow material, the green material, and the red material, all on one 3D geometry. So we can mix and match. We don't have to have one material for one 3D object. We can have as many materials that we want on one material object, or one 3D object, excuse me. So if we analyze what's going on in our shader tree, we have the base shader, which is shading everything blue. Everything starts off blue, and then it goes up one level when it's rendering and says, oh, actually, I have a number of polygons in the scene that need to be red, and it makes them red. So instead of the cube and the bottom of the sphere being blue, it makes them red. And then it goes up another level and says, oh, actually, I have some polygons in here that I want to be yellow, so it makes them yellow, and so on and so forth. So that's the basics of applying materials to your 3D objects. Start with a selection, add a material by hitting the M key, and you're good to go.